Hi guys, welcome back to Why Did the Nations Rage with the painting vlogs. This is episode 5 of Sea Under Siege. And this is a big episode. I got a lot of work done in this episode. This is the 5th sit-in, and it's time to add the detail. So I started out working on the lighthouse here, and basically what I wanted to do was try to go in and make things darker initially and then highlight some of those dark areas, because my main goal and my main objective here is to try to darken everything overall. So what I had initially planned on doing was darkening everything up and then only highlighting certain areas. And my plan was to use the wet on wet technique, similar to the way that I did the wood panels in the Imperfect Cathedral. And, you know, for the lighthouse itself, I just initially basically wanted things to be kind of gray looking, like concrete. And as you'll find later on in the video, I actually changed my mind with this. And by the way, you guys, I painted for 15 hours today. And this video is, well, it's not 15 hours of footage because I don't have that much space as far as memory cards go to record 15 hours. But yeah, I'm determined to get this painting done in the next few days. And so I'm really pushing myself to get as much done in each sit-in as I possibly can. And I had goals in mind. I don't just go in, you know, head deep and not really have a goal or a stopping point in mind. And what I wanted to do today was to get the detailing done on the lighthouse, the regular house, and all the rocks. That's what I wanted to finish up today. And I was determined to go until I finished it. So right here, these are kind of just decorative pointed pieces of wood. I don't really know what to call them, but I got the concept from an actual lighthouse. It's in Oregon, and when I saw these things, I just thought that they looked really cool, and they really set the lighthouse itself off. And so I decided that I wanted to put them on my lighthouse. But it was actually very challenging to define these shapes with the paint. Then I moved on to the house, and originally what I wanted to do with the house was make it like a turquoise looking color. And that's basically what this color is right here. It's just turquoise. And when I added this color here, I kept in mind the fact that it's supposed to be nighttime, it's supposed to be dark. And then, well, I cut a lot of that out because I'm actually going to come back to it later. But here's where I moved on to the rocks, and I brought out my secret weapon, you guys. I have some glaze, and initially I just thought that glazing was for adding shadows after you added detail to something, but then I realized that glaze can also be used as a medium for blending. And when I realized that, I knew that I had to give it a go. Now, what I didn't show you from the previous clip when I was still working on the lighthouse and the house itself is that I was struggling a lot with trying to get the paint to do what I wanted it to do. But I immediately realized whenever I started using, there it is right there, the glazing medium, that I was going to have a much easier time adding the detail. It basically breaks the oil paint down to a consistency that's almost like ink. And right here I'm just experimenting, trying to see what I can do with it. This is the first time I've ever used glaze, period. So my initial thought was that I wanted to have two visible colors, two different colors for the rocks. And I didn't know exactly which colors I was going to use. So I experimented with it a little bit and decided that I wanted to use this olive green color to try to suggest that the rocks have algae on them because they're constantly exposed to that seawater. And so I wanted to use the olive green, but I didn't just want to use olive green. I wanted to add another color to it just to give it some more clarity, kind of make it look more realistic and give it some composition overall. So it took me a little while to figure out what my second color was going to be, and I eventually came up with a Alizarin Crimson and Van Dyke Brown mixture and just ran with it. And at this point I'm getting really excited because I'm starting to realize what's been missing from my life this entire time, and that is this glazing medium. And it just makes things so much more simple and fluent, I guess is the right word. Because at this point I'm getting the results that I want, and I'm getting the results I want in a fraction of the time. So you'll actually see in the next few minutes how productive I am with detailing whenever I'm using this glazing medium as a blending medium. And like I said, I had no previous clue that you could do this with glaze. But basically what you want to do is you want to add a regular paint, just the straight up paint by itself, like what I'm doing right here. I'm actually adding two different colors, but you want to add normal paint by itself, and then you want to come over it with a highlight or a shadow with the glaze. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more in a minute. But what I'm doing here is I'm using this gray. It's called Payne's Gray, and I'm putting that underneath the olive green. And when I put the olive green on, I'm kind of just blotting it on. Right here I actually moved to the Alizarin Crimson because that upper rock there, I figured that it wouldn't have algae on it because it's, you know, further up and the water's not really touching it. So I wanted to add that extra, you know, fine detail in there just to show that, you know, this rock doesn't have algae, but the one underneath it does. So notice how I put that on there, that crimson brown color. I kind of blotted it on. I didn't blend it at all. I just kind of blotted it on top of the Payne's gray. And then I went in with the glaze, and that's titanium white that I'm using with the glaze. It's got a little bit of blue in it, but not much at all. So I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but I actually got that done very, very quickly. And I was really excited about it. Like I said, it's literally the thing that's been missing from my paintings up till now. And from now on, you know, I'm hooked. I'm going to be using this stuff in every painting because I love the results I get from it. I'm showing you right there that I'm actually using 4 different paintbrushes at one time, just alternating between them. But you guys can see how quickly you can add detail when you're using this method. I really wish that I would have used this on my previous painting, actually. But that's the area that I had mentioned previously that kind of got covered up by some of that water. And I'm trying to get some of it back there. And right here, I'm actually mixing the 2 mid-tone colors together just to try to see what it's going to look like overall. So I put the Van Dyke brown alizarin crimson color on top, and then I put the olive green on the bottom, and I kind of just blended them together in the center. Before going over it with the titanium white with the glaze. I love this stuff. It's so satisfying to use. I had a blast painting this next part. I really enjoyed it. So what I'm doing here is basically the same thing. I'm using that Payne's gray for an underlayer. And you guys have already seen me go over this part with Payne's gray before, so you're probably thinking it's pretty redundant for me to do that, but well, you'll see why I did that in a minute. But basically right here I got rid of the olive green and I just stuck with the Van Dyke brown alizarin crimson color. And I'm not sure exactly at this point how I'm gonna do this area of the rocks, so I'm doing a little bit of experimenting. But as I progress, you're going to see that the mid-tone is going to vary, and it's a really cool effect. After I put the alizarin, or after I put in the Payne's Gray on the bottom, and then like I said before, I don't like brush stroke the Alizarin Crimson on top of it. I kind of blot it. I put a really thick layer of the Alizarin Crimson in the middle between the Payne's Gray and the Titanium White, and I just kind of blot it in there really thick, but I'm not covering the whole section that I'm filling in with the Alizarin Crimson. Here I go. Just check it out. This is what I do. That's the Payne's Gray. And I'm also doing this in a pattern the same way that you saw me block it in if you saw that episode. Now here's the Alizarin Crimson. You see how I'm not covering the whole section. I'm just blotting it in certain areas, and that's actually gonna help guide me when I come in with the Titanium White. It's gonna help guide me into actually seeing shapes that I want to make with the highlight. Now the cool thing about the Payne's Gray is that it's actually got, I'm not sure exactly what colors are used to make it, but I know it's got some blue in it because you can clearly see it when I add the highlight. You can see the blue coming out in it. But as I was saying, because I'm not covering completely over the Payne's Gray with the Alizarin Crimson Van Dyke brown color, you notice that there's a little bit of a variable in the mid-tone color there. Parts of it look crimson, parts of it look grayish blue, and that's, like I said, that's because I'm not completely going over the Payne's Gray with the Alizarin Crimson Van Dyke brown color. I'm just blotting it on in certain sections. The only drawback, I will say, the only downside about using this technique is that it uses a lot of paint, because those two undercolors that are underneath the highlight, you have to really cake them on to get this effect to happen. And another cool thing about it is that you can actually control how much highlight you want to go into the shape that you're trying to make. It all depends on how hard you're pushing that brush down into the paint. I mean, you can just barely skim over it and you'll get a slight highlight, or you can like really dig into it and make it extremely bright. Like what I'm doing right there, I'm varying how hard I'm pushing the brush into that paint, and it's affecting how much highlight I'm actually getting. And this might be cheating, actually. It's definitely a shortcut when it comes to adding detail, for sure, because it's almost like you're cutting a step out when you use this glaze. But in my opinion, it actually looks better than it would if you just used the same old standard technique, which I give you an example of that in the Imperfect Cathedral. The conclusional video for that painting, I give you an example of the standard way to do an undertone, a midtone, and a highlight. That's basically what most of that video is about. This is a very, very productive way of painting, and it's very effective as well. So I'm extremely happy with the results I'm getting in this this cliffside here. This is an effect that I've been wondering about and trying to really just trying to figure out for a long time. So I finally finished it, and I decided that it changed the painting so drastically that I actually wasn't happy with the house there. I wasn't happy with that turquoise color anymore, and I wanted to change it. I also thought about the fact that this house is right next to the ocean, and it probably wouldn't have your standard run-of-the-mill siding. It probably wouldn't be made out of that kind of wood, because you got to think it's right next to the ocean, so it would probably rot if it was made out of wood siding. So I quickly decided on the spur of the moment to add lines, vertical lines in a staggered pattern to make it look like bricks. So it went from being a wood siding house to a brick house. And I also wanted to get rid of that turquoise color as well, so I added some Payne's gray on top of that. And this is my second attempt to do something with these shingles. Now, the first time I wasn't using the glazing medium, so I wanted to try to go back over it with this stuff and see if I could get something closer to what I actually wanted to get initially out of it. And it's still not exactly what I want it to look like, but I think I'm just gonna run with it and leave it the way it is, because I really, at this point, I don't have enough time to mess with it. It doesn't look bad, but it's still, like, in my mind, it seems kind of like it needs more detail than what it has. When I finished doing that, there I am adding the Payne's gray on top of that turquoise, and it just kind of desaturates it a little bit and makes it fit more with the color of those rocks. But the next part of the painting is basically the same thing. I go back to the lighthouse and decided that I wanted to change the overall look of it. I actually wanted to define the blocks that the lighthouse is constructed out of. And so I laid those in, and I'm basically just going back over what I previously did at the beginning of the video, but this time I'm using the glaze, and I'm just trying to see what kind of effect I can get out of it. But I also realized that I wanted to go from that concrete look to actually suggest that the lighthouse is partially constructed out of wood. And I wanted the wood to be red. And I'll kind of talk more about that in the conclusional video to this painting. But now that I have a medium to use with the paint, I'm excited to try to go back over these pointed ornamental pieces here to see if I can actually make the lines themselves sharper. Now, it didn't work real good because the paint was still wet, and I'm using permanent red to do this. Permanent red's a very transparent red, and so you're going to see that undercolor giving it quite a bit of a highlight. So this might actually need a second coat when it dries. I'll just have to see what it looks like. But there you see me smiling, because here's the point that, you know, we've all been waiting for. It's finally time to officially make that thing a lighthouse, like a real lighthouse. So what I have here is I'm laying out 4 different types of yellow. I have lemon yellow, medium yellow, yellow ochre, and cadmium yellow, and I'm just trying to see, I'm trying to get a good orange. So I'm mixing each one of those with the permanent red. And this next part of the video, I just want to apologize in advance for sticking my head in your face quite a bit. But basically, I'm a lefty, you guys, and this is the right side of the canvas, and the canvas is pretty much covered with wet paint at this point, so I'm trying not to smear the paint, so I'm standing over off to the right. Now this here that I'm putting in the middle is pure titanium white on top of that yellow there. I actually decided to go with the medium yellow. It was the yellow that I thought worked best. And here I am just trying to suggest that this main light from the lighthouse is giving off quite a bit of ambient light. So I just kind of played around with this until I got a solution and an outcome that I was happy with. And from that point, I actually moved on to the casted rays in the sky, which you'll see in just a minute. All that's just a mixture of permanent red, medium yellow, and titanium white. Now this might not be the best way to go about doing this, but it kind of just made sense in my head to do it like this. And I might mess around with it a little bit, maybe change it a little bit before the painting is done, but for now I just wanted to, like I said, get my goal done and come to a good stopping point. Because at this point I was actually, you know, like I said, I painted for 15 hours today. I started out with the medium yellow, and then I started mixing the titanium white into it, and I just kind of kept going over each one of those areas. I'm just kind of protruding the ambient light further out right here, just to make it look very intense. And then I went back in with some ivory black and just laid the windows, the frame of the window back in and the railing back in. And, well, it's a lighthouse now. An official lighthouse. But I almost forgot to put in that bottom rail. Put it back in, but then I remembered at the last minute. Alright, that's what I did today. Alright guys, that's going to do it for episode 5. Just wanted to get a quick shot of it as it sits for now. We are slowly but surely getting there. And in the next episode, we will be trying to do something with that water. And then there may be 1 to 2 more episodes after that. And it should be done. So thanks for watching. Leave comments. Rate the video. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time. Alright, Jared signing out with Water the Nation's Rage. So on and so forth. Later.